Welcome in, Fantasy Play Callers!
Hey everybody!
How you guys doing today? We have an awesome episode for you guys today. Unfortunately, Dakota could not make it in. He's just getting back from a road trip. Those Marines, they stay pretty busy.
They stay pretty busy. They don't get a lot of sleep. It's considered weak if you sleep, so that's part of it.
That is true, right? Exactly. Marines don't sleep and they don't die. They just regroup in hell. That's what I've been told by the movies. So, we got a great episode though, for you guys today. Lots on the news and the injury, kind of report here coming up, and then, of course, this is the time for waiver wire pickups as we go into playoffs here, guys. It's coming up. We want to make sure that you are good and ready for that playoff run. If you are in a position to make it, if you are not, RIP to your teams.
Yep. Start playing for next year. Ruin somebody else's playoff hopes. That's also the joy in fantasy football. Is even if you're out, you can. Yeah. One of your friends, you could destroy their hopes and dreams. What else is there to look for?
Yeah, because if you're not going to be the champion this offseason, you can still talk smack to your friends and say, hey, listen, you didn't make the playoffs because of me, though.
Exactly.
But just feels it's not as good.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty good.
Yeah. Fantasy football can create friendships, it also can ruin them. And
it can end them.
Both are great.
Both are great. Both are positive as long as you're fantasy footballing.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's the most important part. No, but we'll get you whatever you need to be the disruptor in your league if that's your role this year. Or if you've been listening to us all year, I'm sure you're well on your way to a championship, and congratulations. But we'll just help you, get over that last little hump here.
Exactly. Last little hump we got going.
Perfect. So let's just hop in, to the injuries. Do you want to kick us off with some quarterback news? Or what do you think?
So I think we start off with the biggest one, I think, of the week this last week with Jimmy Garoppolo going down with an ankle injury. Didn't look good right away, and it already came out that he is a broken foot, so he's out for the season. So this has huge impacts on one, fantasy, but two, actually, especially with how good the team's been playing. San Francisco in general, they look like their defense is extremely legit. They're number one in a lot of different categories, and now their top signal caller's out. And obviously, the first quarterback, Trey Lance, went out at the beginning of the year, so this is their second quarterback going out for the year.
Yeah, they've had some bad luck with injuries in the offensive backfield with Elijah Mitchell getting hurt, and then you had Trey Lance get hurt, and then you've had now Jimmy Garoppolo get hurt. Yep. The only good news is they seem to be immune to it. They seem fine as a team.
Well, you got that type of defense. That helps a lot and helps mask some of your offensive worries.
And that offensive line and that run game, Christian McCaffrey came over. So there's definitely been some things. But it's definitely interesting. What do you think of Brock Purdy over there?
Mr. Purdy. He looked decent. I'd say he didn't look terrible. He didn't look like he was lost out there, but there were some throws that you could tell he definitely missed. Maybe it was more of the jitters and stuff, but I think it's definitely obviously more information we need on him, but since he is Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. He was drafted the last pick overall in the draft last year, and so I wouldn't expect major things out of him, but he could surprise, but to be determined, I guess. They just want something a little bit below Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is what they're looking for.
That's kind of thing is that Brock Purdy does to me. He reminds me a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's going to do anything outside of the system. But if you can just play in that Shanahan system and be okay and manage the game and not turn the ball over,
you'd be in a better spot.
With that defense and that run game, you might just be fine.
You're right, and he could be. I mean, absolutely. It just eventually, even in those systems, you have to make a play, and if you're not able to make that play, you're your team in a bad spot.
Yeah, especially as you get further into the playoffs, right? If you're playing against Pat Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and those guys, there's going to come a time where you're going to have to make something happen.
But against some better defenses, they're going to shut down what you want to do, especially in the running game, and then you're forced to be able to beat them through the air, and so. Sure. That could be the case. But we'll see. I think it's definitely a huge blow, though, for the team. Yeah.
And then another quarterback injury, we have Lamar Jackson, who is out with a knee injury. And this one's still pretty up in the air from the sounds of it. Harbaugh kind of said, we don't believe it's a season-ending injury.
Yeah.
But at the same time, didn't really give us, a timetable for return. So it's one of those things where it's he's not out for the season, but also the season's getting kind of close to the end, and maybe he, misses a few weeks here, which would not be ideal.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're up there as far as seeding is concerned. I think they're third or fourth in the AFC, I believe, as far as their seeding for a team is concerned. So he went out right away. I remember watching this game. Like, as soon as that happened, they put him out. They put Huntley in, and of course, they somehow still beat the Broncos, which is not a huge surprise, even with the backup quarterback. But yeah, for Lamar Jackson, I would expect, based off of how they were treating it, like, it seems to me to be like at least a couple-week injury, if not longer.
Yeah, that was my impression as well, if you're kind of reading between the lines.
Yeah, with no information at all, but that's just what I kind of took from it a little bit.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Does not mean that's what's going to happen. Definitely something to watch the practice schedule this week and say, hey, is he participating? Obviously, as we've mentioned before, that's the biggest indicator whether or not someone is going to play. If Lamar Jackson's even getting limited work this week, I'd expect him to play, but I don't think that will be the case. Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So,
and actually, with real quick on Lamar Jackson, then we'll move on. Like, he has been struggling himself a little bit, so hopefully you have already looked for kind of a backup QB that you could plug and play right away, because I know he hasn't been living up to the potential. Now you have a legit reason you could actually put somebody else in there and hopefully get some better production. So
yeah,
hopefully have somebody else like Justin Fields or like a Tua or something.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The next on the list is, since you mentioned it, let's just go Tua real quick here.
Yeah.
Looks like he's in no danger of missing, the next week. I believe he's already limited in practice today. Is that, I believe? If not, he's expected to be here soon. So, should be
fine.
Fine.
Yeah. Yeah, he should be fine. I don't know if you watched that game a little bit, but he missed some. He was inaccurate that game for some reason. I don't know what the deal is. He hasn't been...
And early, like before the injury,
yeah,
before anything seemed to be wrong with Tua, like he seemed to be missing Jalen Waddle
all over the place. He thought he was like 6'3" rather than 5'10" or whatever he is, 5'11".
I mean, honestly.
So, but yeah, he should be back, and should be good to go. That's huge for the Dolphins. So.
Cool.
Go ahead.
And then Kenneth Walker has an ankle injury that's not, Pete Carroll told us, is not a sprain.
Okay.
It might have looked like a sprain.
Dr. Pete Carroll.
It might act like a sprain. But if you trust Pete Carroll, it is not a sprain.
The most optimistic coach ever created, and I can't believe a word out of his mouth. He's just a player's coach, but at the same time he lies. So
yes, if you have Kenneth Walker, you should be acting as if this is a sprain.
Yes.
But there might be good news on the horizon. Don't count on Pete Carroll. He will lie to you.
Yes.
He's a heck of a coach.
The two rules in injuries in fantasy football: don't believe the coach, and don't believe the player.
Yes.
Because the player does not know. They're also optimistic because they want to be out there to earn paychecks. So that's another reason to follow the practice reports and actual news coming out of verifiable sources. So.
Like us. Like a verifiable source right here.
Absolutely.
Guys, this is who you should be listening to.
Again, just complete speculation. Check the practice reports. Not saying anything but I would expect next week probably. If it's a low ankle sprain, probably next week, and then back the week after that. Which I think that's what it is, but
which is likely in time for your fantasy playoffs, which would be the good news. The bad news is if you're on the border right now, Kenneth Walker is probably not someone you want to be counting on to help you this next week. Yes. And Travis Homer also on the injury report as well. So really you're looking at DJ Dallas if you are running to the waiver wire, which is someone that we'll mention and kind of talk a little bit more about later. So.
Yes, definitely.
And then Joe Mixon should be back finally after 2 weeks from a concussion, which is
crazy.
Very long for a concussion injury. But with what happened with Tua, right? The NFL is being extra careful this year. And so Joe Mixon has missed 2 weeks, but he should be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Samaje Perine actually has done a really serviceable job and scored a lot of fantasy points for people that did pick him up. So hopefully you had him as Joe Mixon owner. You can just slide Joe Mixon back in. But for those that have Samaje Perine and don't have Joe Mixon, look to pivot.
Yeah, it's Samaje.
Is it Samaje?
Samaje, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it's Samaje. But yes, Samaje Perine, has been excellent, especially in the passing game, which is huge for PPR, which is what most leagues are.
He's a different running back than Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is more, I mean, he definitely is physical too, but he's a little bit faster and a little bit more elusive. P. Ryan, man, he just I don't know if you watch him run to catch balls, but he just trucks people. He's a bigger, thicker dude that absolutely just, I don't know, he's just like a bowling ball out there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think he's a little shorter too, so he does seem like that. Bowling ball is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Short, stocky, just a thick boy.
Hard to tackle.
Big chungus coming at you. And then Michael Carter is not going to be playing this week from the sounds of it.
Yeah, so he had a little ankle sprain. He was out last week, Zappy, I think his name, the running back, actually was very serviceable in his absence. And they're playing on Thursday night, I believe. I'll write that real quick.
So Zonovan Knight.
Zonovan Knight.
Yep.
He actually was pretty serviceable. He got most of the work. Ty Johnson got mixed in a little bit too. So if you have him, I think you should feel comfortable playing him because it sounds like Carter's going to be out again this week.
Yeah.
The involvement in the passing game is really what's going to keep both of those running backs going. So,
for sure. And then Treylon Burks. Was he an ankle or concussion?
He was concussion. I don't know why that one's on there.
That's what I thought.
Did you see that play actually?
I actually have not seen that play. I did miss that game.
Wow. So he had one catch for 25 yards, I believe, and a touchdown, and that was on that one play. It was up the seam, made a great catch, had somebody on his right that was the cornerback, and the safety came over as he was trying to make the catch over his head and just absolutely crushed his head with his shoulder, and his head went back, and he was like...
I heard he got fined.
He was down,
penalized, and everything else.
So it looked really bad, and so I would expect, wait and watch is what we have down for him right now. But with a concussion, I do think he's probably going to miss this coming week. We just saw with Joe Mixon, you just don't know. So definitely pay attention to practice reports and when he's going to clear. But I just have a hard time thinking that he's going to be ready for next week after taking a hit like that. It's pretty obvious that he might have got knocked out or lights out for like a few seconds or something, because that's what it looked like, but not a thing you like to see.
Yes, yeah, most definitely. It's not good for the game, and it's not good for the players, and it's not what we want to see. Obviously, we want those guys to be in there. So, best luck to Treylon. Hopefully, everything ends up fine. And then Mike Williams does not look likely to play this week.
And that is not even news, because he's out almost... It feels like he's out almost every week this year.
Yes.
He doesn't seem to feel a lot.
If you drafted Chargers wide receiver early... our apologies.
Struggling a little bit, so...
and then let's just do kind of rapid fire on these last three, if that's cool. We got Brandon Cooks, Hayden Hurst, and Kadarius Toney. All of them are kind of watch the practice report people, but also unlikely to play this upcoming week.
Yep, I think that's fair to say.
Cool.
The only bit of news, so that's our injuries. I want to just talk about the news side of it and just put it out there because obviously he used to be a high-profile name, but Baker Mayfield has been officially cut by the Carolina Panthers officially. So,
which is death to my Baker Mayfield believers squad that was this offseason, I'll be honest about it.
Fall from grace. That is Baker Mayfield.
Boy, has it been rough to believe in Baker Mayfield this year.
I know. He went from protecting the house or like trying to clean it up with the stadium to not even having a house anymore.
Yes, he's homeless. Although it sounds like there's some teams that are interested in maybe picking him up. The Niners maybe were even on that list from what I was reading today, which might be an interesting fit. But then again, we will see. I will say this, Baker does do a lot better off of play action. That would be a very play action friendly scheme, but that's neither here nor there.
I refuse to believe anything good.
Unlikely that Baker Mayfield has a big fantasy impact on your season for the rest of the season, for sure.
No, absolutely not. I do think he'll get picked up, though, especially if he falls down. Because the waiver priority, though, San Francisco is really far down because of their record, so it'd be interesting to see if somebody else picks him up in the waiver system before San Francisco does.
Yeah, but who wants him? I mean, that's the real question.
You also have to, if you pick him in the waivers, you got to pick up his contract, which I think was I'm not sure we can look it up. I think it was a couple million.
1.3, I think.
Okay, so it wasn't too terrible for a quarterback, I guess. But
yeah, I think you only have to pick it up for the rest of the year.
Yes,
which is different.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
So we'll more. I'm sure we'll buy maybe tomorrow. By the time people listen to this, will probably know.
Yeah.
What you've got picked up or not. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think, real quick, and then we'll move on to waiver wires, do you think would be an upgrade from Purdy? Or do you think that's pretty equivalent? We don't know a lot, I guess. Right
I said the problem with that is, like you said, we don't know a lot about Purdy. I'll put it this way. Whoever is starting in that Kyle Shanahan system that is very quarterback-friendly and very dependent on the run game, if you need a safe start at quarterback, they tend to do pretty decent. Not amazing, but where you can safely start them and not have to worry too much about it. So,
I think if you're San Francisco, you just stick with Purdy, bring in Baker, and then if Purdy starts faltering or shows signs, you throw in Baker.
It could be.
You got to lose.
They did also sign. I saw they signed Josh Johnson today as well. So
the suitcase himself. He's been on. You see that he actually set the record for the most teams played for.
Good for him.
For I think it's like his 16th NFL team, different team he's played for.
You know what? He must be a stand-up guy to get along with that many people in that many buildings and not piss anybody off.
That's crazy.
Enough that other teams don't want to sign you. No, it's good. It's good for him. It makes you wonder if the Niners are even going to go after Baker or if they're just kind of content with what they have and they'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
All right, you want to jump into our waiver wires, the piece of resistance that we're getting into this week?
Yeah, most definitely. Let's get into some running backs here. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. I will talk about somebody that I didn't think we were going to talk about like 4 or 5 weeks ago that I think is now peering his head. I think there's a lot of doubters, including myself, just based off his play and his attitude, and he was almost off the team. We talked about Cam Akers, currently at 45% ownership. He actually had a great game this last game, 17 carries, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 target. But I think what a lot of people saw, like we talked about, like there was a lot of back and forth with the team. He was away from the team, he was back on the team. Of course, there's a 3-headed monster with when Williams came back, and then they still had Henderson, and then they had, of course, Akers. So fantasy owners are dealing with all of this 3-headed monster and a bad backfield, and the offense is really not doing very well. And I'm not saying the offense is going to all of a sudden change completely, but it does seem like it's really cleared out for Cam Akers as far as a primary running back. Now, Williams is definitely going to be really involved in the passing game in that piece of it, which still he has value there as well. So I'm not definitely, obviously, if he's still available, I think he had some more ownership there. But Cam Akers is going to be, looks like the primary running back in that system as of this point. So, having a primary running back that's still out there and available on waiver wires this late in the season and having some extra value you can have on your bench in case injuries happen or something in the case of emergency, I think you could do worse than picking up Cam Akers.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's got a lot of volume, which is definitely a big part when it comes to running backs, especially this time of year. You're just looking for people that are getting the ball on the waiver wire, and he does definitely fit into that category. He had 18 touches, so that's a lot, and that's a good thing. So, and he's a very talented running back in general.
The one thing I will say too, because looking at him at the beginning of the year, he did not look good as far as his running is concerned and his per carry.
Right, coming back from that major injury though too, right? Which most running backs do usually look a little worse.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Achilles.
The Achilles, especially. This is the year we're really looking at how people are coming back, and he did come back and he did get playing time, but he just wasn't looking very good. These last few weeks, especially this last week, I saw some runs where he had some juice to him, and so that part of it obviously is the volume that he's getting, but part of it's the eye test. They don't have a lot of other options or a lot of other offense out there right now, and so I think it's something to consider. They still have to play offense, so
yes.
And as far as the, real quick, and then we'll move on to yours, the snap percentage wise, this is another reason I really want to bring it up is last week he only had a 30% snap share, and Kyron Williams had a 70%. Week before is almost like a 55-39 split with Darnell kind of sprinkled in, but this last week he was 72% snap percentage. That's a huge jump from the previous week, and so that's where you see that he's coming out to be kind of more of a lead dog. So I think definitely worth at least picking up and having on your bench.
Yeah, most definitely, for sure. Yeah, and then my guy here is going to be Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon, who has been heavily involved in that Kansas City Chiefs passing game. Now, McKinnon is not someone that I feel like you can probably reliably start every week. But if you do see a tough matchup for the Chiefs and you think that they're going to have to throw the ball a decent amount, for instance, like the Bengals, like they had to do, this last week, or coming up, they're going to play the Denver Broncos, who, well, maybe not at the toughest opponent, do have a pretty decent defense that they will have to kind of throw into and won't just be able to run the ball all game. Texans kind of in the same boat, and then Seattle's actually tough competition for them. So I think he's got a decent run here of teams that I would feel pretty comfortable starting him against, especially since those cover 3 defenses that Denver and Seattle will run, the cover 3, cover 6, they're really vulnerable in the flat, which is where obviously you will find Jerick McKinnon a lot of the times, and Andy Reid knows that they're going to take advantage of it. So if you need a good little running back, he got 47% of the snaps this last week, so obviously Pacheco's the running back there, but if you're in PPR, get yourself a little taste of McKinnon, and then if you need a flex start or someone goes down, he's definitely going to be.
No, I think it's a great call. He has a lot of involvement in the passing game. He also does get red zone carries mixed in too with Isaiah. So it is like kind of the best of both worlds. Now, obviously, I think they split those, so it's not like one gets all the goal line carries or other, but. Yep. You're giving yourself a chance to steal a touchdown too, in addition to get those passing work. So I think he's definitely a good player to have on your mixed in there. And then if anything happens to Pacheco, then that is major. Snap percentage goes up and stuff like that too. So
at that point, he's probably a high end RB2.
Yeah, and I think.
Well, Pacheco's young, probably unlikely, but still.
Right, but I do think that they would probably get, CEH more involved if that was the case. I think he's been inactive the last few weeks. If somebody goes down, I think he'd be more involved, but I really think that McKinnon would get the majority of the work, though. But
yeah, no, I agree.
Excellent. No, good call. There's a couple I want to bring up. These are more kind of the backups, and if you don't mind, I might just throw 2 together if that's the case.
Yeah.
So one would be Jordan Mason. So we didn't know when Elijah Mitchell went down. Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey, I want to talk about this a little real quick. I don't think as many people realize how much of a split that actually was when Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey, when Elijah Mitchell first came back healthy and Christian McCaffrey just got traded, right? That first week he got traded, he was Elijah Mitchell was still not healthy at that time, so he wasn't going to be able to play. And so Chris McCaffrey had this huge game. He had like 35 fantasy points. That's where he threw that touchdown, had a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown, and just absolutely blew the world off. And then when Elijah Mitchell came back, man, it really came down to earth. It was like a 50-50 split when it comes to the running back room. So now, obviously, Elijah Mitchell's out for the year. He's on IR, so now we were very interested to see what happened in this next game. Well, the good news for CMC owners, it did go back to CMC kind of doing his role and having the large majority of the work. But it's really important to kind of know who that next guy is, especially on the San Francisco 49ers. And and who knows, maybe as this person gets a little bit more acclimated, he might get a little bit more of that Elijah Mitchell role. I don't think he will, because I don't think he's the same talent as Elijah Mitchell. But I do think he's really important to have as a handcuff. So I'm talking about Jordan Mason, who's 15% owned for the San Francisco 49ers. This past week, he really showed that he is going to be the backup to CMC, replacing Elijah Mitchell a little bit in that role. He had 8 carries for 41 yards, so nothing to sneeze about. But again, especially if you're the CMC owner, I really think you should, this time of year, especially going into the playoffs, the free agency is obviously depleted. There's not a lot of other options out there anyways. You're not going to find a star wide receiver sitting out there this time of year. I would definitely try to go pick up your backup, and Jordan Mason seems like to be the backup there.
No, I love this call for a multitude of reasons. One of our big, points philosophically, kind of coming into this last run here was as the season wears on, these older veteran running backs do tend to get hurt a little bit more. And so we want to target their handcuffs.
Yep.
So I love that we're doing that with Jordan Mason here. And the other thing is that if you're the Niners, CMC is going to be a huge piece to you making your playoff run. He is getting up there in age. You probably want to keep him healthy, which might mean giving some younger guys some opportunities. So you could just see an increase in workload just to keep CMC's legs underneath him, especially in games that they feel comfortable they're going to win.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like if they're going to blow out, which might not happen as often now that Jimmy's out, so we got to keep that in mind as well. But if they do happen to blow somebody out by getting a defensive touchdown, which is very likely with their defense, then CMC could take a little bit of that backwards snap percentages for the fact that, like you said, they're keeping him healthy. They can kind of ground and pound with kind of a little bit bigger back, Jordan Mason compared to CMC. So I definitely could see that would be a little bit of the case too. So as far as snap percentages goes, CMC, I just want to highlight kind of what I was talking about before real quick, and then let's move on. Mm-hmm. When Elijah Mitchell was healthy, it was a 65-35%, a 66-22%, with Jordan Mason at 12%. And then 63-21. So he was really in that 30s, 20s, but when he's on the field, he was getting the ball all the time. This past week with only Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey went from 63 up to 82%. And that's where Christian McCaffrey was typically living in the 95% in Carolina. So, but to see that big jump, one thing I wanted to highlight real quick is CMC owners got to feel a lot better going from 60% to 80% with the use, especially with playoffs coming up. So, I think it's a huge news for Christian McCaffrey owners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. 20% increase in snap share is always.
When he's on the field, he's utilized too. It's not like somebody's out there just running.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle Shanahan is a smart coach and coordinator, and he's going to get CMC the ball.
Yep.
And then who is your other?
Yeah, I throw this other one in here real quick. I just really want to highlight him, especially when he was on Thursday night. So it's hard to remember, especially that far back when you're doing waivers on.
I don't remember
Tuesday.
what I had for lunch this morning. So
exactly, I barely remember what my kids' names are. I can't go back that far. Just kidding. I love my kids.
No, you should say that without sounding like a hostage.
Okay, sorry.
That makes it better.
That usually is the case. No, I want to highlight James Cook. So he, for the past few weeks prior, he hadn't had a lot of involvement, especially at the beginning of the year. Any involvement at all. He'd averaged 4 to 5 carries, maybe a game, and typically if he got any more work, it would be more towards end of the games and blowouts when it was in Buffalo.
And even that seemed rare at the beginning of the season. It did seem
rare, absolutely. Yep. And so, but these last few weeks, the weirdest thing ever, I think we talked about this on a different podcast, they traded for Nyheim Hines at the trade deadline.
They did.
And they decided that we'll give a pick, and then we will not utilize him at all. And that was like...
And then we'll put in a Nyheim Hines role.
Yes.
And then we'll have James Cook fill it.
That is exactly
After
right.
trading for Nyheim Hines.
Yes, it makes perfect sense if you don't think about it for any seconds at all.
Right.
Yes. But to put it in perspective, though, this last week he was super involved in the actual game plan, not in just blowouts. He was snap for snap with Devin Singletary there. This is not going to be good for Devin Singletary owners, so if you are one, you might want to skip over this part. But they had very similar snaps actually. Singletary only had one more snap than James Cook, to put it in that perspective. 33 to 32. That's huge. James Cook had 14 carries for 64 yards, and then he was also involved in the passing. He had 6 receptions for 41 yards. I think the big highlight there is the 6 receptions for 41 yards. coming out, obviously, he's a smaller back, but he was really drafted not only for his running ability, but really he was a great pass catcher, and they've been looking for that. And so, like you said, they traded for Nyheim Hines to get a pass catcher, and then all of a sudden they realized like we had one the whole time. So I don't know why it took the trade for Nyheim Hines to realize how good James Cook was, but the bottom line is they realized it, and the utilization is there. That this is an important game against New England in division, and he was utilized. So I expect that to be going forward, and 60-40 is probably percentage-wise for snaps between Devin. I bet that's going to be the case going forward. Worst case scenario, it could be a 50. Worst case scenario would be a 60-40. I think best case you're looking at 50-50 to 60-40 the other way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And here's the other thing that I've mentioned before, James Cook, that I'm still kind of waiting to see them actually do this. But one thing that we've talked about too is James Cook in college, he lined up out wide a lot, which means that you can actually have Devin Singletary and James Cook on the field at the same time. And there's nothing wrong with that for those two back sets where they motion someone out or whatever else. And so
could be like a CMC role. CMC does that all the time and runs those routes. And
yes, and James Cook is, as a receiver, really is that type of talent. I mean, there's a reason why this was the third running back taken off the board, and it wasn't, quite frankly, his ability to run between the tackles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it really is that passing game aspect. And they're finally, hopefully, fingers crossed, waking up and utilizing him there a little bit.
It could be the case that maybe this is just a one-off situation. They go back to more standard Devin Singletary. But to me, showing this amount of work in an important game in division is really important to win because you're fighting for that number one seed, and you give a rookie running back that much work. It shows you're gaining a lot of trust with him.
Yeah, and he averaged 4.5 yards per carry. He caught all of his 6 targets. You know what I mean? Things like that go a long way as well.
And nothing is, Devin Singletary's been playing amazing too. So they're really blessed to have like the two really good running backs. So I just think for me having like a running back like this, a rookie that's getting a lot more involvement, this is one that I would jump on if we had a chance to go for it. So
no, I agree. And it's one of the things we talked about too, is that paying attention to when the rookies do break out, right? It's like you want to be there. And we've been doing that all year, so I completely agree. My last one here is going to be Zonovan Knight, who is 47% owned already, so you guys have already done a pretty decent job of jumping on him. But if he is available in your league, he actually looked very effective. He had 5.5 yards per carry. It was a surprisingly patient runner.
Yeah.
It kind of jumped out on the tape to me. It's like he looked like he really was always hunting for a hole and kind of always knew where to be. And that's as important of a skill as dodging tacklers would be for an NFL running back. And I think people underestimate that. It's sort of actually what makes Elijah Mitchell such a great runner. It's not that he's out there necessarily, to me, breaking all these tackles, is that he's constantly following blockers where he should be, and is constantly in the right spot. And Zonovan Knight really looked that way to me. Now, obviously, Michael Carter might be coming back, so you're kind of taking a flyer here, more so than it's kind of a slam dunk pick. But if he's not back this week, which it sounds like he might not be, then Zonovan, you'll have him at least for 1 week and see what he does. And if he has another great week, they might be tempted to play him alongside Michael Carter, if not maybe over Michael Carter or in a timeshare of some sort. So you can get yourself somebody this week, and I think that he's a good pickup. So.
No, I love this. He looked pretty good out there, actually. Like you said, 5.5 the carries, nothing to sneeze about, and he was involved in a lot of different facets, including the passing game. So I think he's a good pickup. I do think when Carter comes back, there will be a split, but I think that it won't be like a huge difference. I mean, again, 60-40 probably, maybe in Carter's direction, maybe it could be a nice.
Yeah, absolute best case scenario is probably 60-40 for Zonovan, but at the same time, I mean, if you're getting that with an offense that is, quite frankly, with Mike White running it at the helm, has been pretty good.
And Michael Carter's he's a good running back, but he is a smaller running back, and he's more utilized in the passing role, so maybe that's what the roles that they'll find when he comes back. But
yeah, very well could be.
Again, we'll have to see on that, but. That's it for us. Do we want to mention any? We talked about the injuries real quick with Kenneth Walker. So if you were going to pick up somebody there, I think we mentioned DJ Dallas had an injury too. But would you say he's probably the pickup?
Homer had the injury, right?
Homer did,
and
okay.
DJ Dallas is okay. This backfield has been a mess all year because Homer and Dallas are kind of almost
interchangeable.
And then they're also perennially injured, like each week. So DJ Dallas currently is questionable.
See, I thought he got injured too, yeah.
And Travis Homer is currently out. So I thought that might be the case. So I believe Dallas actually should play this week. Yes. Yeah, he was in for Kenneth Walker last week, but then injured his leg as well. At the end of the game.
See, I think if you have to pick him up and you have to play somebody because you don't have anybody else, that's great. But also, I just don't know if I have a lot of faith. Although they are playing Carolina, who's
terrible.
Is terrible, but
yeah. So and then behind them is actually I was just looking at it's Tony Jones. So if you're absolutely desperate. It sounds like DJ Dallas will likely play. It sounds like Travis Homer is out. Kenneth Walker out.
Yep.
So you'd really be looking for DJ Dallas, who is still questionable. So you might end up be having the last minute switch to Tony Jones if you're set on starting a Seattle running back, which quite frankly is not usually a bad idea.
Yeah.
But it's going to be kind of a shell game this week a little bit.
I would actually try to go for some of the people that we talked about. Knight especially would be a great fill-in if you can, because it sounds like Kenneth might be back, as we talked about earlier, next week. And so if you can get a perfect 1 week fill-in, and then you can get Kenneth back, would be really ideal. Or Jerick McKinnon would be a great fill-in too. So it's just one of those things where if you can get kind of by this week if Kenneth is out, especially with it kind of being a carousel between Seattle, you don't know who's injured, who's not. Go after one of these guys, and then if DJ is still there towards start of game time, and you kind of get more clarification, hopefully with injuries, then you can maybe pick them up or something like that.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to play it. I do like that a lot because you'll find out real quick this week. We're on Monday night. We're filming here.
Yep.
You're going to know probably by tomorrow night whether or not DJ Dallas has practiced, and that'll tell you a lot, obviously, about what's going on.
Yep.
So if he's practiced by tomorrow, great. If not, you might be looking at somebody else and just wait and see on DJ to see if he's going to play.
Yep, I think so.
Cool. All right, well, should we get into some of these pass catchers?
There's some pass catchers out there. Absolutely. Do you want me to kick it off?
Please do.
All right, I'm going to talk about Demarcus Robinson. I think we talked about him a couple weeks ago. We had that huge blow-up where he had a lot of targets. I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. He's only still, though, 12% owned, and I can kind of know why. So he had that huge week 2 weeks ago, and then the week after that, he did have a very disappointing game. I think it was 4 targets, only 1 catch for a few yards there. But this last week, he did come back with some vengeance. He had 8 targets, 7 catches for 41 yards. So definitely serviceable there. And there's not a lot of other pass catchers we talked about currently on Baltimore besides Mark Andrews. And obviously we don't know a lot about Tyler Huntley, he's going to be his favorite target, but obviously we assume it's going to be Mark Andrews. But the second target seemed like to be this week was Demarcus Robinson, and he's a very safe target for especially a not a higher tier quarterback like Tyler Huntley, because he's a larger wide receiver. He's very tall, and he's very fast and lengthy, so he's got that big catch radius. So I think especially in PPR, he could have some value kind of coming down the stretch with getting targeted and making some plays. And he does get the occasional shot. I mean, even that week that he had 2 weeks ago, where he only had that 1 catch, he was a few feet away from getting like a 40-yard bomb and connecting and scoring a touchdown. So I think they take some of those shots with him as well. So I do believe that he has some value as like a wide receiver 3 maybe in your lineup.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love this pickup. I think this is probably the wide receiver that I would be most excited to go after this week, even including my own. And it's actually worth noting that the Ravens actually have him listed as their wide receiver 1 on their depth chart.
Oh, wow.
So he is ahead of Devin Duvernay on their own depth chart, which tells you a lot, because Duvernay's had a decent year to kind of fill that spot in once Bateman went down.
Our cohort, Dakota, shout out to you, was a big Duvernay truther at the beginning of the year. And not to say he's had a great year, he's had really good value, especially the first
compared to where he drafted him, Dakota was absolutely correct. There's no doubt about that.
Great pickup, absolutely. Yeah. But he really shows to be kind of more of a gadget, fast returner type player, which is nothing wrong with that. But he doesn't have the skills to be
command that volume.
Yes, the volume and the everyday wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. He's more like of a gadget wide receiver 3 that can really hit that big play. Devin Duvernay, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah.
And so he definitely gonna have value. I think he can make those plays, but if you're looking for more something consistent on that team, I think Robinson would be kind of the case.
Yeah, I think Robinson's flying under the radar for a lot of people at the moment, and I think that's a big mistake. Now, I'm going to talk about somebody who is on literally everybody's radar, and not for the right reasons, for all the wrong reasons. And I'm still going to say that you should go out and you should pick up Kadarius Toney. Okay? Now, I know you probably drafted him in the 10th round thinking you were getting the steal of the draft. I know Eli did.
I did.
And what ended up happening was he didn't play all year long. And then he gets traded to this new team, and you get all excited, and you've already dropped him, and you have to blow your fab on him, and you spend fab on him, and you pick him up from this new team, and he still doesn't play. And you're mad. And I completely understand it. You are right to be upset. Okay? And he has burned you. And I get it. But you're still talking about an incredibly talented wide receiver.
Yep.
Who might play for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Okay?
There's one word in there that I did not like. I'm gonna get it.
That's might. And that's the truth of it. We don't know his situation. He's up in the air. This is not something that you need to overspend on. But he's only a 43% owned. People are not flying off the shelves to pick him up. As a matter of fact, people are dropping him right now.
His percentage is going down currently, so
yes,
make it even easier.
And I might be the one catching the falling knife, but I would rather risk a roster spot on a very talented player with huge upside. And it's hard to find those this time of year. Because if Kadarius Toney steps in and he's on the field and he's healthy for the rest of the year, he could win you your league. The odds of that happening, pretty low. But I'll take my chances and don't overspend here. You don't have to pay for him. You shouldn't have to pay for him.
Right.
Just go grab him for free, $1, whatever, and move on with your life and see what happens. And maybe, worst case scenario, you waste $1 and you waste a roster spot for a week or two.
Yep.
Best case scenario, you get a really talented wide receiver in an incredible offense.
No, I do agree with that. The only issue is, I guess it depends on if you could afford the roster spot, right? Like,
absolutely. Be careful who you drop.
Who you drop. If you do have a IR spot that you can utilize as you get the later practice reports, and eventually his status changes to out, that does allow you to be more flexible. Put him in your IR. You could pick up one of those stashes or the running backs that you need for handcuffs. So that does give you more flexibility. If that's the case, then you definitely should keep Kadarius Toney, which is what I'm doing in my case, is to throw my IR when I can. But yeah, it's just hard because we're getting to the point where, obviously this week is the week before the playoffs, fantasy playoffs, and then we're in the fantasy playoffs already. So it's like, if he does become healthy, are you willing to put him in your lineup that week? You're in the fantasy playoffs in the first round. Are you willing to start him over somebody else you've been starting all year because he's healthy? Because that's a question you have to ask yourself.
That is a good point. And maybe not. It depends on who it is. But, like, for instance, would I start him over Juju? Probably not. Probably not at this point. You're absolutely right. But I'll eat the roster.
But if he's out, let's just put it hypothetically, if he's out this week and he comes back next week in the first round of the playoffs, and he does show like maybe has some good plays or a good target share, maybe you do feel comfortable playing in the semis or something like that. So there is some more value there. Just like with these injuries,
it's brutal,
especially when they're coming off of an injury like this where they just re-injured it. Like, are you willing to put your fantasy
season
on the line for Kadarius Toney?
Yeah.
And that's a question you have to ask yourself. So I do think he is a great roster spot. I think you'd be in a lot better spot if he played this week so you can see him getting integrated, up to speed.
Sure.
If he doesn't play this week, it's really it's getting more and more difficult. But I love the talent, as you know, and if he does play, I think in real life football, like Kansas City is gonna in the playoffs is gonna really benefit for him being healthy.
Yeah,
and that's gonna be a huge addition to what is already a huge explosive offense.
Which means also if you're in a dynasty league,
yes,
probably still a target that you would like.
Well,
to
a good time to actually. It's probably past your trade deadline actually in dynasty. I was just going to say, but if you don't have a trade, or if it's a later trade deadline, if it's maybe before the playoffs start or something like that, then go out and try to trade for him now. People are probably more willing to trade him after seeing multiple hamstring injuries out multiple weeks. So.
Sure.
I still like the pickup, especially if you have the ability with the IR. I think that really changes the game and has that flexibility.
Yes, or if your bench is just weak.
Yeah, that's true too.
If you have a bad bench, take a shot on a guy that could win you your league versus hanging on to somebody that you know is not going to do.
Rex Burkhead. I know that's from the beginning of the year just came to mind.
Yes, but don't hang on to Rex Burkhead. Drop Rex Burkhead for Kadarius Toney. You still have him.
Absolutely.
Or
at least your bench will look cooler. That's another step in the positive direction.
Yes, that's a good point as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Let's get into your second one.
Yeah, I actually kind of switched. I was going to talk about some DJ Chark. I still think he's a good pickup. I won't go too much into it. He came back and looked pretty decent. I just wanted to highlight, though, I think more importantly, I think a bigger pickup. I don't like the quarterback situation. I don't think anybody does. But Nico Collins at 29% can definitely add value and be a good wide receiver 3 for your team just based off of volume alone. I mean, he had 10 targets this last week. I know he only had 3 catches, 31 yards, and a touchdown. Not a great catch rate, obviously, there from being 10 targets, but that shows what kind of targets he's getting. But we just talked about Brandon Cooks and his injuries, and obviously it seems like he is going to probably be done for the year. And if that's the case,
absolutely,
this volume is not just going to be this last week. That's going to continue. And put in perspective, the last 3 weeks he had, this week he had 10 targets, last week he had 9, the week before he had 7, and the week before that he had 10. So the targets are consistent. He's the number 1 wide receiver for that team, if not 1A to 1B when Cooks is healthy. Now Cooks is out, so I think you'll get that consistent volume, which especially in PPR can give you at least 10 to 15 points per week, which again, if you get that from a flex player, a wide receiver 3, you're doing pretty good.
Well, and you can remember as well that he got 10 targets this week, and he was playing mostly against Denzel Ward.
That's true.
Right? Which is a very tough player to play against. I mean, that's no joke. And it was his first week being the wide receiver 1, really, with Cooks being out.
Yep.
Or one of his first weeks. Cooks has been out a couple times before.
I do have to say, the only caution about there is that Kyle Allen had looked real bad.
Yeah, no, it's probably not going to get a lot more efficient.
No,
but
at
least
a little bit, maybe 10 for 5.
You may get
10 for 5.
That's what I was getting at. Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying he's going to go for 10 targets, 9 catches.
10 for 10.
But if he goes 10 for 5,
yeah.
I mean, honestly,
10 for 5 for 50 yards, and hopefully maybe get lucky, get a touchdown. You're
to pick that up off the free agency this time of year. That's a heck of a pickup. I completely agree.
Absolutely.
Cool. And then I'll talk a little bit about another person. I guess I have a theme this week. Who's probably spurned you? Who's probably hurts.
Both the worst thing about this, I wanted you to continue so bad, but these players, I was so high on it, they destroyed me so much.
Right. Remember that fantasy football is a lot like the stock market. Okay, so you gotta buy low. Right? Yeah. So these guys are guys that were high value targets, and I'm talking was Kadarius Toney, and obviously now I'm talking about Elijah Moore over here, who was a high value fantasy option going into this year. Everyone was very excited about Elijah Moore. Zach Wilson completely killed all of that, and Elijah Moore at one point got so frustrated he was wanting off the team. But he is now on the team, right?
Yeah.
He has a quarterback who has been successful throwing the ball. Now, he hasn't been successful throwing the ball to him yet. Okay, so we do need to tweak. We just need to tweak it just a little bit. Get Elijah Moore the ball a little bit more.
Yeah.
But eventually you have to stop throwing to Garrett Wilson at some point, even though he had, I think, 15 targets this last week?
He had a lot, yeah.
So I do think that some of that will come off. Elijah Moore will get some of the work here as Mike White kind of settles into this offense. And we'll spread the ball around a little bit more. And that hopefully won't be to Corey Davis. Because I'm not sure why Corey Davis keeps getting the ball and Elijah Moore does not, but that is the bane of Eli's existence over here.
Absolutely.
And mine as well. But I do think Elijah Moore only 31% owned. Once again, probably not someone that people are rushing out to go get. Go get him for crazy cheap. I think these are two good buy low options with massive upside. They might have hurt you before, but buy when there's blood in the water, right? And sell when there's gold on the streets, and that's what we want to do in fantasy football as well as in the stock market. So let's go ahead and pick up some pieces of Elijah Moore for dirt cheap. And it's only going to cost you a roster slot if we are wrong. But I do still think that he is someone worth holding on to see what comes out of this new offense and the new success the Jets have had.
I love it. Yeah, I do. Especially with the fact, again, Mike White has, especially this last game, he can throw the ball. There's a lot more trust, a lot more volume out there because Mike White's behind center other than the one that I won't even say his name. But again, I think Mike White's not perfect. He threw some interceptions and stuff like that. But the biggest thing for fantasy, he's able to put value out there. And obviously we saw in Garrett Wilson, he had an amazing game. And I think even the week before that, Elijah Moore had like a 40-yard catch from Mike White. He's willing to put that out there where if it was the other guy, it wouldn't even been close. So I think that with the talent and the ability that they're willing to throw the ball more, and they're probably going to have to in some cases, I think that having him as a wild card on your bench is really good. To highlight that real quick, as far as snap percentage is concerned, really one thing about Elijah Moore, especially when we had all this stuff at the beginning of the year, he was in his 80s and 90s in snap percentage. Like, he was on the field all the time. Obviously, it doesn't matter when you have the person I will not name throwing you the ball. But then, after all that situation happened, he really went down to first off the 60s, then went to the 50s, and then obviously he was out a week because of that, and then he was low percentages-wise. Even these last few weeks, week 9 he's 45%, week 11, 54, week 12 was only 35, but then he jumped up to 68% this last week. And so you do see that huge jump in percentage. Means he's on the field more. Obviously, can mean more equate to some more fantasy value out there too. Unfortunately, Corey Davis is still at 81% after he came back from his injury, so that's the bane of existence. One last thing for him, and we'll move on. But for dynasty purposes, especially right now, I know the trade deadline's passed, all that stuff, but this is a perfect buy low opportunity for Elijah Moore. Corey Davis, I just looked at his contract because I wanted to know when he's going to be cut off the face of the earth. Yeah. And his dead cap this year was $13 million, which not going to happen there. But
you can't cut that. You might as well just keep him on.
You can't cut that. That is 100% true. But next year, he only has a dead cap of, this is like a double number too, $666,000 dead cap in the buyout. So
big difference, big drum.
High possibility because he has a $10 million contract next year to be paid. I would really highly suspect with the talent that they have that he'd probably be.
Yeah, he'll minimum restructure. Yeah, exactly. Which to better reflect his real contributions to the offense.
So I say all that just to say, Elijah Moore, especially with everything that's been going on with them, I know, especially if you're a dynasty owner with them, owners are fed up. Like, this would be a good opportunity to, maybe you can't trade her now, but start discussions and see if you can set something up for after the season or something. So
that's right. This isn't the NFL. No one's going to yell at you for texting your buddy.
No, exactly.
And be like, hey, when that trade deadline is up, how about we put a deal together? So
absolutely. No, good call. One last one, and I'll go through this one quickly. I want your opinion on this one.
I have one more as well. That's right.
Yep. Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I want to throw Jahan Dotson out there at 15% ownership. He really, what came out at the beginning of the year, he had that streak. I think it was 3 touchdowns back to back at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Really came on the scene strong. But then he had that injury that really kept him out for a huge chunk of the year. And so these last few weeks, he was just getting back. And he didn't have a lot of involvement just getting back, just a few targets here and there. But just this last week, he had 9 targets for 5 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown. And so that's obviously a lot of involvement there. And he had a catch that was really, really cool to watch. He caught it, and then he did like a full 360 and sprinted out the other direction. But yeah, this guy is one of those rookies, very talented, has really good catch radius. We talked about it in the beginning of the year. Again, I don't know if he's going to have extreme value, but have somebody like this on your bench as you go into the fantasy playoffs would be a good pickup and stash. The only issue, especially if you need some help this week, is he is going into bye this week, so that makes it pretty difficult if you need kind of a quick start. But you can get him for pretty cheap as well.
Yeah, I mean he's missed 5 games this season. And he's got 5 touchdowns on the year. So he has a nose for the end zone for a smaller guy, but he did at Penn State as well, so I don't think this is actually as fluky as people think it actually is, because he's got really good aggressive hands. Yeah. He does go up in tight spaces, and he does crazy acrobatic catches a lot.
He does that a lot.
So he's a really interesting player, someone that I really liked watching in college, and I love this shout out here. Obviously, would you prioritize him, last on this list, or how do you feel about the
going into bye? Yeah, I definitely would, especially if you need help. Obviously, this week, if you can't afford it, if you're a team that is, able to, maybe you're number 1 seed, you could do some stashes. Your stashes are great, or Dotson. I think those would be the 3 stashes I go for. If you need immediate help or you need to put somebody in for flex, I think Robinson and Nico would probably be the ones I'd go with there. So
yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. Really, what are you looking for? Yeah. If you're looking for somebody right now, I completely agree that you have the 2. And if you're looking for let's get some upside in this and kind of see what happens. And this last one, another shout out to someone who's got big upside. I know you've heard us talk about him a lot, so I'll be very brief here. Jameson Williams played 11% of snaps. He only had 1 target. Okay, and we said this about rookies at the beginning of the year, and we said this all throughout the year. Their first game back does not count. Okay, it's not real. He had 11% of snaps.
Yeah,
that's not a game, guys. That's not something you can trust. This isn't something that you should be worried about. If you did go out and get Jameson Williams and are holding on to him, he's fine. This is going to be fine. This is how the NFL slow rolls rookies. Especially with an old school coach like Dan Campbell. So expect him to kind of have his first real game coming up this next week, and I expect to see closer to a 50% snap share is what I'm going to predict coming into this next game, which is a big jump. But they drafted this guy, and they drafted him very, very high. He is healthy. He's healthy enough to get on the field last week. He'll be healthy enough to play a full game this week. And this is not somebody who needs to be slow rolled and handheld into this offense.
I really hope that is correct, and I want that to happen and be the case. I just have a feeling that DJ Chark, we didn't talk about it, but I just briefly mentioned him that I was going to have him on pickup. Yes. He had a great game, and he just is coming back healthy now. So, man, I hope that's the case. What I anticipate that it does go up maybe to 20-30%, and that he gets maybe a couple big shots deep and see if he hits on them. But
sure,
I
could be the case as well.
I don't know if they're going to go high percent. Like 50% would be great. I hope that's the case. But
40 to 50. That's all. I'll call it now. That's my prediction. They spent so much on this guy. They did, and he is really, really talented, guys. And we have not seen him yet. He is the last rookie, really, that has not touched the field this year.
Yep.
And he, had he not been injured, probably would have been the first one off the board. So I'm very excited to see him play.
Yeah, I am too.
At least,
that's the case.
At the very least, watch the Detroit Lions game. I don't say this very often, but watch the Detroit Lions game this week. 1, they've been playing better, and they're fun to watch. And 2, you're going to want to find out what happens with this Jameson Williams story because he might be the waiver wire pickup going into next week if he has a big week this week. So keep an eye on it.
Yep.
And if you have that roster spot and you're looking for some upside, this is another great option for you as well.
Yep. Completely agree. So. All right, that covers the running backs and wide receivers. Let's jump into some streams this week. Let's help people out last week of the regular season. Get that dub for the playoffs coming up here. Sneak in the playoffs. We'll start off with tight ends.
Yeah, I went ahead and went with Greg Dulcich.
Greg.
One of the few bright spots of Denver's terrible offense this year, if we're being honest, has been Greg, who's done very well, especially for a tight end, and has had a decent amount of targets here. It was only 37% owned, so you should have a pretty easy time going out and getting him as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good pickup. My stream is going to be Evan Ingram at 43% currently. He had a good comeback week this last week against the Titans. Or excuse me, against who did they play? I messed that up.
Lions.
The Lions. They didn't play the Titans. They're playing Titans this week, is why I had that on there. My bad. But he had 7 targets, 5 catches of 30 yards, and a touchdown. So he actually got in the end zone. I know the Evan Ingram experience has been, at the beginning of the year, was pretty great with consistent receptions, and they had kind of a lull the last few weeks. But he has come back, and Trevor Lawrence, again, does look for him. He just kind of disappears at times. But I think against Tennessee, they're going to have to score. Tennessee's been looking a lot better with Derrick Henry becoming Derrick Henry season and just running people over and score touchdowns. I think that he'll be a pretty solid stream this week.
Yeah, I'm a huge Evan Ingram fan. I think that, quite frankly, he's a person that you can pick up and just start for the rest of the year, too.
Yeah, he's been kind of the constant streamer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that grab. For my quarterback streamer here, I actually went with, I wrote down Brock Purdy, but what I really mean to say is that whoever the quarterback is that's starting for the San Francisco 49ers, against a beat-up Tampa Bay secondary that has been bad the last 4 or 5 weeks here. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And an offense with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey, they're going to dump the ball off and they're going to get 50 yards a pop. Okay. So I think this is a good start. I think it's a safe start. I don't think you're going to get anything crazy coming out of this, but I think you should actually be pretty safe. Solid 15 to 25 points.
All right, I like it. You're putting your big boy points on because you got to have some bravery to just throw just Mr. Irrelevant out there.
He played well.
He did play well.
He played well against
the former. They didn't win last year. They won 2 years ago. The Super Bowl champs 2 years ago. That's crazy. All right, I like it though. I like it.
Tampa Bay?
Yeah.
Their secondary looks. Has looked bad.
And he has. I mean,
they've been hurt.
The weapons are there. Like we talked about San Francisco all year. I mean, they are loaded with talent in the wide receiver side. So as long as they can get him the ball and they can run, it's definitely a possibility. So no, I like it. I just, like you said, you just have to. You're braver than I am. I'm just gonna put it in that perspective. So I like the logic though.
Yeah. So I mean, all of them real quick. Antoine Winfield was out. Sean Murphy-Bunting out. Mike Edwards out. I mean, they have 2 safeties and their top cornerback, or second cornerback, because Dean is the top.
Yeah,
is going to be out. So I mean, it's like you got 2 safeties and your number 2 cornerback.
Yeah,
out. This is what I'm picking on.
Okay.
More so than anything.
Makes sense.
If that's helpful.
Yep. So. Speaking of the Tennessee Titans, I went with Ryan Tannehill versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville is currently 25th against QBs for scoring wise. Tannehill has looked good getting the ball out, and he's been scoring again. Not blowing the lid off, but you're not looking for blowing the lid off for Tannehill here. You're just trying to get 15 to 20 points to keep your season rolling. So I do think you'll get that from him. Always have the potential for potentially a rushing touchdown with his legs as well. So I think he's good. I do think if Treylon Burks is out, that will affect him a little bit, but I still think he'll be a good stream against Jacksonville. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game because Jacksonville's been really able to score here recently. So.
Yeah, and they spread the ball around a lot. They're in Tennessee, so I'm not too worried about one of their weapons being out. It's not like one of those offenses where
that's true.
It's like Derek Carr missing Devontae Adams or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, no, completely agree. And then for my defensive stream of the week, I've got Arizona versus New England. New England's offense has been bad. You can tell by the frustration and the screaming on the sidelines. They have really struggled, especially over the last few weeks again. So this is what I'm picking on, is that I'm not necessarily on the streamers picking somebody that's a great defense. Arizona's got a decent defense. But I'm really picking on New England here, just like I'm picking on Tampa.
You're just picking Buddha, is what you're picking. You're picking Buddha Baker.
I mean, that as well. And if you've been watching the Hard Knocks, you gotta love Buddha Baker.
Buddha's the best, man.
Like, how do you not love that?
We live in Arizona. We're obviously Denver Bronco fans because we moved here from different states. But, I mean, watching that and seeing Buddha, man, Buddha's the heart of that team. And
love him.
You need to clone that guy about 22 times.
Honestly. If you started 22 Buddha Bakers, you'd win every game.
Every game.
I don't care. Start him at left tackle.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
He'll take him on.
It's not the size of the dog, it's the heart inside of the dog. I don't even know what the saying is, but that's
it's not the size of the dog or the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog.
Yeah. I like mine better.
Alright, fair enough.
No, I like that. Good call there, especially with, like you said, they are struggling right now in New England. I don't know if play calling or whatever the case is, they are not looking good.
Yeah.
I actually went with one, too, that is a little scarier for streaming because Las Vegas Raiders have not been a good defense whatsoever. They're able to put a little bit of pressure on the quarterback, but other than that, their secondary has been and continues to be very, very bad.
Yes.
But it's, who you play. It has a big impact on who you start here as well. And they are playing Los Angeles Rams, who...
They have all the starters, right? The Rams?
Yeah, everybody's pretty healthy down there, right?
No big deal. They're just missing literally everyone.
Yes. All the people that were the Pro Bowlers the last 2 years, they're out.
Gone.
So it doesn't seem like Matt Stafford's going to play. Obviously, we already talked about Cooper Kupp's back to play. Allen Robinson's out for the year. They still have some decent talent at wide receiver, but at the same time, it's a backup QB. Things can happen pretty quick. A backup QB, one mistake, one bad read, it can turn into 6. And Max Crosby out there, he still can put pressure on. They still have Chandler Jones. So they can get after the quarterback. As long as they can get after him pretty quick, I think they'll be able to hold up. So.
Well, the Raiders are coming off a big win. Their season is not over.
They're still technically in the hunt.
Yeah, if they win out, they can win this. So they're gonna. I didn't eat their lunch, and I think
it looked good. I mean, it's crazy. Real quick in Los Angeles, their offense is really kind of turning around, and they have legitly probably one of the best running backs in the league right now this year. I'm saying this year.
Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs, and then they have literally probably the best wide receiver in the league, or one of the best wide receivers in Devontae. So, I mean, that offense is. And look at all the pieces they're missing. It's kind of crazy, but they've really kind of started to put it together the last couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
With no Darren Waller, no Hunter Renfrow. I mean, it's been kind of crazy, actually, what they've been able to put together. And, Josh McDaniels looking like he,
thought he was going to lose his job about 2 weeks ago, but he's hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he can do.
So we are into our good, our bad, and our ugly segment here. Should we kick off with a little bit of good news?
Yeah, I'll jump into the good news. You want me to go?
Please do,
Yeah, I just want to talk about good as far as we just hit. Obviously, we're Monday, we're recording Monday anyway, so we were coming off that game last night, Sunday Night Football, and I just want to put it out there that, over the years, a lot of people, including myself, have really bashed on the Cowboys for being average to below average, mostly below average for every year because they're always hyped, they're always nationally televised, everybody's always on them, the favorite team, so it's easy to hate. But I gotta tell you what, this year seems pretty legit and different. And I just wanted to highlight that coming off. You obviously talked about last night. It was a really close game in the third quarter. Colts just scored, made it 23-22, I believe. They missed the 2-point conversion, so it stayed 1-point game. And then all of a sudden, the Cowboys decided that the game is over. They scored 33 straight points against the Colts, which is absolutely insane.
Yep.
To score 33 points in a game, let alone a quarter. You know how many games Denver would have to play to score 33 points?
It hurts. Like
3 games!
It would take us 3 games to get to 33 points. It would.
They just scored 9 points.
Because I think we're averaging under 14 a game.
Well, they scored 9 points. They lost 10-9. This was last game. So, but no, It's crazy to score 33 points in a row. And they're doing it in a lot of different facets. And not only that 33 points, but the week before, I believe it was the week before, they went into Minnesota, a team that is literally leading the NFC. And they were in their home stadium. And that home stadium actually is one of the best home field advantages you can have in the league, with that new stadium being very loud, passionate fans over there. And Dallas came in and just whooped their behind from the beginning. It was an absolute blowout. So, I mean, these things together, it's just crazy. It shows that Dallas is legit, and a lot of people are not going to want to say it.
They've kind of flown under the radar for a 9-3 team, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and the reason why is because, you look at it, what happened, and if you look at their season in totality, is that Dak Prescott, they had a good couple games to start, and then he got hurt. He was out for the 5 or 6 games, or I think it was 5 or 6, I believe. But Cooper Rush came in, and with this defense, what I'm going to talk about here in a second, was able to hold it together, and he, I think he went 3-2. I'll have to look that up of exactly what he went, but
yeah, did pretty well.
He did pretty well, and he held it together and kept him in it. Without him doing that and being serviceable at least, they would be in a lot of trouble right now and not be in the position that they're in. But now you got the full reinforcement side. You got Dak back. CeeDee's been playing out of his mind here recently. You got a solid tight end. You got one thing.
Two-headed monster.
That's what I really like. The two-headed monster with Zeke and with Tony Pollard. You have this big grinder that can really get in there and pound it, and he's hard to tackle, and he can get this goal line stuff, and he's still really good at that. And he still has some bursts here and there as well. And then you have the second guy come in that just is an explosive monster that you can't catch. It just seems like every other play he's breaking a 10 to 15 yard run or a pass, it seems like, out there. So really good combination between those two. It really complements Dak very well. And then really the highlight of the team, though, is on the defensive side of the ball. A couple highlights out there for this team. Right now they have the most sacks in the NFL at 48 sacks, which is pretty crazy. They have the third best defense for points per game let up this year. And the second least passing yards per game let up this year as well. And so you look at the stars that they have. Michael Parsons, just absolutely insane, defensive player of the year caliber. Yeah. Their cornerback, Diggs is really great playmaker. He does get burnt every once in a while because he jumps stuff and overplays it.
He plays aggressive.
He plays aggressive.
High risk, high reward player, but still a very good player.
Very good player out there as well. And they have the total defense. But yeah, they've been playing really well. And it does seem like with having a running game like this, they have I believe it's the 4th most rushing yards per game for the teams this year. So you have a team that can rush the ball. They have a great offensive line, and they actually, one of their tackles, who's been Tyron Smith, has been out most of the year, is actually going to come back here the next couple of weeks and be in a playoff push. Yeah. Which he's a Pro Bowler.
Quite possibly the best offensive tackle in the league, or at least up there.
So the way they're playing now, and then you get that reinforcements back. I mean, you got a team that's great on defense, can sack the quarterback, has some good quarterback play, and also has a amazing run game, and has a quarterback that is, at least, whatever you can say about Dak Prescott, he's good to above average. Like, he's in that range of...
Yeah, I think he's definitely above that.
Yeah, and so you have somebody that can lead you there and be able to, get your playmakers involved. So between all those things, I say a lot, but it's to put it out there. Hate on them, yes. I'm not saying you can't hate on them, but
they are good.
They're good, and I think they're going to be a contender going into the playoffs.
Yeah, they're a complete team this year, which is something Dallas has not been for a while.
Yes.
And so, I think they've got a good chance, to really go in and do some damage. And speaking of teams that have a chance to go on and do some damage, I'm going to lead it right into my team here that's kind of heading into the playoffs, and that's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. They came out with a big win.
Yes, they did.
This is a big win.
That's a huge win.
Over Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been possibly the team to beat at the moment, outside of maybe the Eagles. And you know what? The Bengals constantly do this thing where they look like an average NFL team for the first half of the year. And then
average.
Joe Burrow comes out and goes, "No, I'm Joey Cool. I will inspire and lead this team and be just great and do all the things that I have to do to win games."
Yep.
And then he comes out and he wins games. When it matters most, I don't know there's a quarterback out there that I would want on a fourth quarter drive more than Joey Burrow, with how young he is, says a lot about how well he has played in these big moments in his young career.
He's had a lot of big moments, and you look at, he won the national championship, he's already been to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
He's been on those moments already. I think that's why he's got that.
Yeah, and he's got that swagger about him that just makes you believe in him, and his teammates have clearly bought in.
Yeah.
They're all in on let's get behind Joey B, and they believe that they're, that they were robbed last year and that they have a chance to come back and win this year.
Yeah.
I do think that's the mentality in Cincinnati. Their defense has played, very well, and that offense, especially now just getting Jamar Chase back.
Yeah, that's huge.
Is very, very scary.
Very, very good. Absolutely. I agree. And definitely a huge contender out there. They proved it going into Kansas City, which we talked about really tough places to play. That's literally probably one or two for the toughest places to play and win. So,
yeah, absolutely. Arrowhead is rough.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great call. Let's talk about our bad. Let's get into it. Let's talk about what's out there. And if you are a Jets fan, I'm going to keep this pretty brief, but I just wanted to put it out there because I'm going to crush your soul. I'm going to take it. I'm going to snatch it. I'm going to destroy it. You guys had a really great year, despite of he will not be named. And
are you counting them out already?
The Jets?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah.
Season over.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. Let's go.
Absolutely. The reason why is we obviously just saw them play in Minnesota. They played very well. They lost.
Tough game.
Tough game. They had some chances at the end. But their going forward schedule is not great. There are a couple teams on here when you hear right away, you're like, oh, these are going to be beatable. But context and perspective of where these teams are at currently will kind of explain it a little bit further. So we talked about they just won Minnesota. They lost that game. They're going in They're facing Buffalo in Buffalo this next week for a division game, which
not going to be fun.
Not going to be fun against that defense. They just came off of a really great game, and they're going to be hungry. They're going to be going after Mike White. Let's see how he does against a pretty formidable defense. Minnesota has a good to okay defense. Buffalo has a really good defense. So we'll see how that goes. And then they do face, after the next two games, is the ones what I was talking about where you're like, oh, they should be able to win these. Lions at home, which again, we talked about the Lions. They had a horrible start to the season. They're really playing some good ball here recently. They have the two running backs. Jamal Swift is starting to come back, starting to be a little more healthy, really explosive in the passing game.
Just getting Jameson Williams back.
Yeah, Jameson Williams is just coming back. Jared Goff is playing serviceable ball, not turning the ball over extreme amounts. And Amon-Ra has been playing, really amazing. Obviously, as the number one wide receiver out there. And then on defense, they're playing pretty serviceable. Hutchinson is really playing amazing. He's been Okuda's been playing pretty good.
Finally has played a full season, and we realized why they drafted him so high a few years back. He's played really well.
Absolutely. So I don't think that's people are going to put that down as a W real fast, and with their defense, I understand why. But I think that's going to be a closer game, and they have potential losing that. And then the Jags as well, they're going to play at home. And again, same thing with the Jags. They've really played well recently. Trevor Lawrence has really been on the money for what he's been doing on the offensive side of the ball. And so I don't think that's going to be easy out as well. And then the last two games are really where, again, in order for them to really be in the playoffs and even have a chance at having a a wild card or a good seed, they really need to win at least three. Yeah. Three of these.
3 does.
So even if they win the Lions and the Jags, they're going to have to win another one of these. I'm sorry, I put a lot of money that they're not going to win in Buffalo. And these next two are. I don't think they're going to win these either.
Tough games.
Seattle at Seattle. We talked about Arrowhead. This is probably the number 2 place that's the hardest to play in the NFL for crowds. The 12th man. So and then
Seattle won, but not
Seattle's been playing well. Offensive side, obviously they have weapons, and defense has been playing underratedly pretty well as well. And then the last game of the season, Miami in Miami, and again.
Explosive offense.
Explosive offense. They've added some defensive pieces with Chubb, and they look like they're really coming on as well. So, and you're playing with, obviously I know it's better than Zach Wilson, but you're still playing with a quarterback that is not at the caliber of some of these other teams you're facing. It's not a Josh Allen. It's not. He's not even a Jared Goff. He's not a number 1 pick of Trevor Lawrence. He's not. Geno Smith this year has been playing at a top 8 quarterback, and then Tua's been playing probably close to 3rd or 4th in MVP race currently. And so you're at a disadvantage quarterback wise. Your defense has got to play, completely out of their mind in order for you guys to win these games. So I really think that
a tough stretch.
And I would don't pack it up. Good luck. I hope you maybe win a couple games if you get in the playoffs, but don't get your hopes too high, Jets fans, is all I'm saying. So
fair enough.
Yep.
Fair enough. So I just want to talk about the fantasy playoffs and the real playoffs and how these two things kind of collide. I mean, it's worth noting there are some teams that are so well positioned for the real world playoffs that you should actually be a little bit nervous if you have their players going into your fantasy playoffs. And this is something to keep an eye on to see, especially towards the end if you get into your fantasy championships here, especially for the Eagles. And the Vikings are the two that jumped out because the Eagles have only lost 1 game, Vikings have only lost 2. Now, obviously, the Bills, Chiefs, Cowboys are at 3 losses on the season. But these teams are very close to clinching not just a playoff slot, but by the time your fantasy championship comes around, these guys could have their first round bye clinched, right? A couple weeks early if they keep playing this well, which is good for them if you're a fan of the team.
Yes.
But the reality is that it's not so good if you have Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown going into your fantasy football championship. So, what I'm kind of telling you is that if you're in the playoffs, if you think you've got a good shot to win this year, if you've been kind of riding some of these guys from this team, if you have Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, it would be worth just keeping in mind at this point, nothing really you can do about it right now, but keep in mind that you might want to have some backup plans in place because you might not be able to start those guys when that final week comes if they've already clinched. This is especially true with the Eagles. If they win out here and they only have 1 loss on the season, they're going to clinch a couple weeks before the season is over.
Yeah.
And that could really run into fantasy problems. So keep an eye on this. You can't trade them now because you're probably past your trade deadline. You're obviously not dropping them. But you want to be looking, and keep in mind, you might want to be a little more active on that free agency wire than you were originally thinking because you might need to play somebody in their slump. Especially at quarterback.
Yeah.
If I had Jalen Hurts right now and I thought I was going to make the fantasy championship, I'd grab another quarterback that I feel like I could start, at least for that last week.
Yeah, I agree. I do. Especially if your fantasy championship is week 18. I think that's definitely a big piece. But I agree. If they do clinch, teams do rest a week early, so they would rest it in week 17, which would typically be the fantasy championship. So I really think this will affect fantasy championship, which obviously, if you get there, that's a huge deal for what you're doing. So I agree. For the Eagles, I was kind of looking at their schedule a little bit. They do play the Giants twice, and they do play the Cowboys once on Christmas Eve, which that game should be amazing. First off, that should be a really good game.
Yes.
But hopefully, I mean, again, you don't want to hope for them to lose, but if they do lose maybe 2 of those 4 games, maybe that puts it into contending status. I guess the 24th, they wouldn't really know until a little later, but
yeah, and that's the thing. So, is it something that it's not something that you should really be concerned about now? But in the back of your head,
yeah, I agree.
And if you see an opportunity to go out and grab a quarterback, and you have Jalen Hurts, and you think that I've got a pretty good shot at the championship this year, I would do it. I would grab them now. Quarterbacks are kind of hard to find on the waiver wire at this point in the year too. So
yeah,
just something to think about.
Yep, I agree.
And if you drafted Kirk Cousins, you didn't make it to the fantasy championship.
just saying that out loud. You're talking to me directly. I have a lot of A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, don't mean to scare you, but it is worth noting.
It is worth noting. Gotta make the fantasy championship first, though. So
yes, right, exactly. So there's a little bit of that, but keep an eye on them.
Absolutely. All right, let's finish up with some ugly. What was gross out there this week, or gross in general, that we think coming up here in the NFL? I'll start off with mine, and I'll keep mine pretty fairly quick. But I think we haven't talked about this in this podcast. I think a lot of people have talked about this before, but I just want to bring up the fact that we just had a tie in the NFL last week or this week, which is just absolutely ridiculous. We have the technology. We don't need a tie in NFL. So I just wanted to put that out there. We ended in a gross 2020 tie for the Giants and the Commanders. The game was just awful. Punt after punt after punt in the overtime. I'm talking about. It just looked like nobody wanted to win the game, which is a whole other story. But this is not the World Cup. We don't need to. We're not playing round robin or whatever the hell they play over there. We are playing. One team goes in, one team goes out. This is NFL football. This is
America.
This is America. We don't kiss our sisters. We don't on the lips, and we don't. Well,
most of us don't.
Most of us don't. But
I'll speak for Alabama.
Exactly. No, but yet we have got to. They came up with the rules in the playoffs, which obviously makes sense because you have to have something to move on. That there's no tie, and they have different ways of settling this. One, you could transfer those rules over to the regular season, or more important, they come up with a set of rules that actually make sense and actually works out for everybody. I think we've talked about this before, but I think one of two things. I know people are worried. They're worried about injuries and all this other stuff. I understand that, but if you play the whole overtime, make it I honestly would make it a full. Is it currently a full quarter?
Yeah,
it is a full quarter. Make it a full quarter. Do what they do now at the end of it. If
actually, maybe it's not. It might actually be slightly shorter. I think it's 12 minutes instead of 15. Or
yeah,
something.
I think. I honestly make it a full quarter.
Yeah.
And I honestly wouldn't do anything with when or you this kick a touchdown or you get a touchdown then you win, or if you kick a field goal then you win.
Give both teams the ball.
Give both teams the ball and give them a chance just to score. And honestly, just play. What I would do is just play it out as a full quarter. Yeah. At the end of the game, and if I played as a full quarter at the end of the game, at the end of that quarter, if you do want to do a short quarter, maybe 10 minutes, that's fine. Play out the full quarter. Don't do this. Yeah. Score a touchdown and win. You're just going to screw somebody else.
Also, no PATs.
No PATs. Oh, that's a good idea too.
Because then it's like there's less chance of a tie.
That's a really good idea. I like.
You know what I mean?
I like it. We're putting it together.
I mean, honestly, stuff like that.
So do a 10-minute quarter. Play it all out.
Yeah.
Whoever has the score at the end wins, right?
Yeah.
And make them no PATs in overtime. Yeah. And then if for somehow, God knows why, they're still tied, then go into the college, get the ball.
I really do like the college thing.
Get the ball at the 40, your own 40, and then see.
I like it. I like it when they start them at the 20. To be 100% honest, I like the idea of just
they're closer.
Yeah, see what you can do. Go ahead, go nuts.
Red zone defense or red zone offense.
Yeah, I do. I always liked that.
Yeah.
I always thought that was fun. Yeah. Any way how you do it, I completely agree though. What are we tying for? What are we tying for? What are we tying? Find a way to do it.
Nobody at the end of the game is happy that they tied. I promise you that.
And these are professional players trying their hardest, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, it's whatever. Guess we'll just call it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also in fantasy, don't make rules so if you have a tie, you can decide who the winner is.
Yes. Yes, and you should be on a decimal system. So.
Yes. Do not go. Oh my gosh.
Don't
get me started on non-decimal systems. It's not worth it. We have the technology.
We have the technology. All right. Anyway, so I'm going to get into my ugly here, and this ugly is going to make me smile because this is ugly every year, and I have to say that as a Denver Broncos fan, it has been fun to watch. And that is going to be that the Los Angeles Chargers, the most hyped team by the media in the history of sports to never win a championship, and I'm including that time period where the Boston Red Sox couldn't win. Okay, because all these ESPN people and whatever the sports radio people, they're all from LA, so they just were San Diego's Chargers fans for forever, and now they're Los Angeles Chargers fans, and they're so excited about it, and they're going to be so good every year, and they blow it every year.
They do.
And they just lost to the Raiders this week. The team was 4-7 going into that game, by the way. Josh McDaniels is supposed to lose his job. This is supposed to be a Super Bowl contending. Justin Herbert is the greatest. He's Pat Mahomes. You guys just don't understand. Like, I'm so sick of this narrative. I'm so done with it. Every year they choke. Okay? Every year they choke. They have a good first half of the season. Their last half of the season blows up in their face. They're 6-7 right now. They're either not going to make the playoffs or they're going to lose in the first round because they are the Chargers. This is who they are. This is who they have always been. Okay? I'm sorry if you're a Chargers fan, but this is just the truth. Okay? It is what it is.
It is what it is.
And I'm tired of the hype. Quit it. They're not that good. Their defense is not good. Their offensive line is atrocious. Their wide receivers have been hurt the entire year.
Yeah.
And Justin Herbert, kudos to him for playing through the pain and playing hurt, but he hasn't had a great season.
He has not had a great season.
And it's because he's hurt, don't get me wrong. But
I think he's been hurt, and their offense has been decimated by injuries, too, with their two best wide receivers being hurt constantly, either in and out of the lineup, and even Gerald Everett's been in and out of the lineup quite a bit, too.
And their whole line is terrible.
Yes, that's a big piece of it, too.
Terrible. So, look, I'm sorry if you're a Chargers fan, but it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. It's been ugly every year. If you're a Chargers fan, you already know. It's everyone else that doesn't seem to know. I don't understand why people don't get this yet. It's like I feel like the boy who cried wolf, except for I'm right every time. I don't, but still nobody listens. Okay, the Charger season is already over. You just don't realize it yet. But your fantasy season is not over.
It is not.
Which is why you should continue to listen to the fantasy play callers. We've got Eli over here. I'm Ethan, Stormer Brothers, and we will have Dakota back.
Shout out to Dakota.
Next week. We missed him this week. But it has been a great time hanging out with you guys.
Absolutely. Great time. Appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you like and subscribe below, and follow us on Twitter if you can for any updates throughout the week. And let's go ahead and get ready for the playoffs. Get charged up.
Let's get charged up, but not like the Chargers.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to throw that in there.
And may your waiver wire bid be $1 over.
Always and forever.
It's $1 over the next closest person. Have a great week, you guys. We will see you next week.
Good luck out there. Peace.
Peace.